Hey, good people. Let's talk a little bit about your wonderful persuasive speech that is coming up. You finished your informative speech. I hope it all went well. And now we get to the next part, the persuasive speech. Now, what's the difference between the informative speech and the persuasive speech? We talked about that a little bit. The informative speech, you're just supposed to be teaching us something, enlightening us on something. The good thing is, a lot of times the audience will be wanting to learn and to know what you have to say. Then we get into the persuasive speech, and it's a little bit more difficult. In the persuasive speech, you're not just asking them to sit back and to learn from your wonderful knowledge. You're asking them to change, them, whoever the audience is. If it's one person, if it's more than one person, you're asking them to change how they think, to change how they act, to change what they do. You're asking folks to change, and that makes it very, very difficult because you know what? Lots of folks are averse to change. And sometimes what you are asking them to change is a core value in their life, is sometimes what they hold most dear. And you're asking them to change. And yes, it can be a little bit difficult. But know this, that there's got to be somebody in your audience who disagrees with what you're saying, or who takes the other side of what you're saying. If they don't disagree and if they don't take the other side, somebody or somebody's, then it's not a persuasive speech. Kind of like a high school pep rally. You go to a high school pep rally, assuming all kinds of school spirit, but you go in with a high school pep rally, and the football team, or the basketball team, or the tennis team, or whatever it is comes out, and all the people are cheering, and then the athlete, whoever it is, goes and takes the microphone and tries to tell, oh, thank you for coming out, or thank you for whatever. And they say, hey, you know what? We got a great school and we got a great team. And you know what? Just about everybody out there already agrees with them. Yes, I'm excited. Yes, it's a great school. Yes, this is a great time. Not necessarily a persuasive speech unless you can actually persuade them to come to the game. All that says this, that for it to be a persuasive speech, there's got to be somebody to persuade, somebody who thinks differently than you on the topic, on the subject, or just won't listen to you on the... Anyway, so that's it. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about this. I'm going to tell you, one, why persuasive speeches are hard. Then, second, I'm going to tell you why persuasive speeches are hard. Third, I'm going to tell you a little bit about, I have to look at my notes here, a little about some of the tools that you have to persuade other people. Fourth, it comes to the question of, well, did I persuade them or not? Did I win? Did I lose? Did I not? Fifth, finally, we're going to come and talk about how to outline a persuasive speech. If you've already started your outline on your persuasive speech, don't panic. We'll get to that in just a minute. It'll be okay. First, let's go into why persuasive speeches are hard. Persuasive speeches are hard because the people, as I just said, the people in the audience don't necessarily want to hear what you have to say because you're going to disagree with them, maybe. Not all of them, but you're going to disagree with some of them. And as I said, it could be something that they have believed all of their lives, something that is a core value of theirs. And here you're going to come and tell them it's wrong. It's kind of like this. Okay, I got some in-laws that I dearly, dearly love, but we wash dishes differently. You got the dishwasher. You put things in the dishwasher. But when you come to the silverware, I put dishwasher in the silverware with the handles up facing me and the eating area down there. They don't. They put theirs in with the handles down and the eating area up on the spoon, fork, knife, whatever. You don't really eat with a knife, but sometimes, hey, who could tell you? All that to say is, okay, we have a difference of opinion in that. Don't talk about it all that much, and it's okay, but we have a difference of opinion in that. They have the opinion that if you put them up there so the eating area that you had in your mouth is more exposed, that they'll get cleaner. What my perspective is that if you put them with the eating area up, then you're going to end up grabbing, when they're clean, the fork by the end that you eat from, and whatever germs you have in your hand will suddenly be on that fork immediately. So, just different ways to do things, different perspectives. And if we get in a debate, they're telling me I'm wrong. They're telling me that I've been doing it wrong all of my life, and I don't want to hear that. So, first reason it's hard is because you're automatically, because it's a persuasive speech, you're talking to somebody or somebody's out there who don't agree with you and might not really want to agree with you. Second reason, second point, I'm going to tell you why it's hard. Again, you know why it's hard? Because you're not going to know necessarily who that is. Now, if you've got 4 or 5 friends around, then you'll probably know which one it is that disagrees with you, because you'll probably have been talking about it a lot. But if you're standing in front of a crowd, where you don't know everybody, in front of a crowd that just gathered it together, if you're standing in front of a crowd, you're not going to know who thinks what or who doesn't think what, who agrees with you, who doesn't agree with you. That's the big mystery of it all. You just don't know. So what do? Well, a part of what you want to do is to do your best to target the audience, to do your best to know the audience, to get to know the audience. And even if you don't know the audience, to know enough to make some assumptions about the audience. You've seen TV shows where they're running for political office, they're running for president, and what do? They go and they campaign all of these places for president. And so you see, the candidate is so tired, and it's the chief of staff who was saying, or the one who's going to become chief of staff, the one who's running the campaign. So, where are we going next? Well, we're going to Iowa. Okay, in Iowa, what do we need to talk about in Iowa? Well, we need to talk about farming and farming subsidies and things of that nature, and water issues, and all kinds of things that would be interesting to the folks in Iowa. Next week, they're going to fly over to New York. Well, what are you going to talk about in New York? Well, probably not farming subsidies necessarily, but you're going to talk about things that are, or they're going to be interested in things that are more pertinent to big cities. They're going to be interested in smog and fog and pollution and commotion and crime and drug. And you find some of that out in the country as well, but you're going to assume that they're more interested in big city issues than in the farming issues. That's called, even though you don't know what everybody's thinking, that's called targeting your audience. Think of it this way. I used to be an attorney. I told you that before. Certainly never did argue a case before the U.S. Supreme Court. Never, ever. I would be very nervous to do that. But think of this. The Supreme Court, how many of there are there on the Supreme Court? How many Supreme Court justices? 3? 6? That's not 6, that's 7. 9. There are 9 Supreme Court justices. And when you are up there and you're giving your persuasive speech before the 9 Supreme Court justices, they are your audience. And they're your only audience. Well, actually, the world might hear about this, and people might come to all kinds of different opinions and be changed about your speech eventually. But for that time being, there are 9 people in your audience. And you know what? Before you go to give a Supreme Court speech on a certain issue, you might not know those 9 people. You might not have gone out to dinner with those 9 people, but you better know what those 9 people say about your issue or have ruled about your issue. So you or people in your law firm or whoever will go and research all of the cases of these 9 Supreme Court justices on what they have said about the issue and how they're likely to rule on the issue. So going in, you'll say, okay, I already know these 3 are going to vote this way. They're not going to listen to me at all. I know these 3 are going to vote this way. No matter what I say, they're going to vote in my favor. So I've got 3 more. So what I've got to do is I've got to tailor my argument specifically to those 3 justices. That's what you call knowing your target audience. It's knowing a whole lot about your target audience. But that's the second thing that's hard about the persuasive speech is that you don't know your audience, but many times, but still you've got to do your best to target your speech to the audience. And so what does that mean? That means if you're trying to target the speech, especially to folks who disagree with you, or folks maybe who are in the middle, maybe that's who you target, the folks who are in the middle, not the ones who will never ever vote your way or go your way. Maybe this is the ones in the middle. So what are you going to do? One thing that you need to do in a persuasive speech is to know the arguments on the other side, to research the arguments on the other side as much as you research the arguments on your side. And you're going to need to address them. That's a bit of how you don't necessarily know the target audience, but you might know what's out there. You might know what the general target audience is going to believe or is not going to believe, or is going to, what their arguments are that's on their side. You need to know those, and you need to address those. In your persuasive speeches, you need to study both sides, research both sides, and have an answer to their major arguments. You can't know your audience necessarily. You can't go out to eat with all of them or interview all of them, but you can know some of the arguments that are probably going on inside their head, and that can be the difference between persuading and not persuading, between getting anywhere at all with that speech and not getting anywhere with that speech. So we say, hey, that's cool. Now, and I want you to do that in your speeches. I want you to somehow at some point address what the other side says about this issue. Now, talking about persuasive speeches, what are your tools? How do you persuade? With what do you persuade? I'm actually just going right from the textbook, from the chapter that I just looked at, and they list 4 things. First thing that you have to persuade with is, let me get ready because I'm about to point all the way at the camera. First thing is you. The first thing is you. The first thing is your credibility. We talked about credibility. Oh, we talked about credibility a lot in the informative speech. Maybe not a lot, but we did. And remember I said, okay, how did I, when I was first meeting you folks, what did I do? Well, I gave a speech and I told a bit about my background and told a bit about my education. Why did I do that? To establish my credibility with you. You're going to need to do that with persuasive speeches. You're going to need to definitely do that. You're going to have to tell the audience why they should listen to you, why your perspective is important. You're going to have to tell the audience maybe a little bit about your background. We'll get into the research in just a minute, but a little bit about your background, a little bit about what you've lived, a little bit about maybe about how this issue has touched you. You're going to have to sound confident. You're going to have to be confident. And you're going to have to establish your credibility. That is one of the great tools that you have. You have you, a good person. You have you, a credible person. You got to share that with them. You got to share that with the audience. So your credibility. And we often get up and say, well, credibility, and for my credibility statement, I say that I did this, this, and this. For a real persuasive speech, you need to do more. For a real persuasive speech, first thing you need to persuade them of is that they should listen to you, that you have something to say, that you, even you who might be saying something they don't want to hear, that you have something to say. Okay, say you've got their attention. Say you've established a little bit of rapport, a little bit of credibility. What's the second thing, with the second tool that you have? Well, what do you think they're going to be? They're going to be your research. Going to be all of the research you do. Remembering you're not just researching, you're researching the whole issue, not just your side of the issue, not just the articles that appear to go the way that you want them to go, to say the things you want them to say, but you're researching the whole thing, including the other side of the argument. So you're going to use your research, use your statistics. Now, a number of you use statistics in your informative speech, and that's great. One thing to make sure of when you use your statistics, sometimes people just go out and say Okay, here's the statistics of this. Coffee has so many milligrams of caffeine in so many cups, and they'll give that statistic and give that statistic, give the statistic of another drink and give that. Sometimes when you give statistics, or a lot of times when you give statistics, you need to put them in perspective for us. You need to demonstrate whether that's astoundingly high or astoundingly low or astoundingly average. If you have real important statistics, it becomes more important for you to put them into context for us. Like this many people, this percentage of teenagers die of this. Okay, is that big or is that small or is that whatever? Well, compared to this and this and this, and it is the highest and all of that, you need to not just give statistics, but oftentimes you need to put them in perspective. In the research, more now than any time else, credible sources, very credible sources. So important to cite your sources. Let me get down here and say this again because I'm almost sure no matter what year, here, I'll get down there close to you and talk to you about this. Almost sure no matter what year you are that you're listening to this, after the informative speech, I can almost guarantee you at least every informative speech I've ever heard, I'm actually looking right in the camera right at you, that there will be people who don't get the whole concept of citing their sources. What can I tell you? How can I persuade you? That's my question. How can I persuade? One, I can persuade you by my credibility that I know what I'm talking about. Two, I can persuade you that it's in the book I'm pointing to over here that you need to give verbal citations. Verbal citations are very different from the written citations or the written cited sources that you give at the bottom of your outline. They're very different from that. They are what you say in class. They are not a part of what you write, but they're a part of what you say. They're a part of what you speak. And so if you have a source here, what you would say, an example of, is says that Stephen Lucas, in his book, The Art of Public Speaking, says that one of the great ways that you can persuade people is through comparative advantages. We'll talk about this in just a few minutes. You've got to cite the source. You've got to say it with your mouth. You've got to say it with your mouth, especially during these speeches. Especially during these speeches. Especially during persuasive speeches. Because guess what? I don't know everything. You don't know everything. Every speaker doesn't know everything. If you suddenly start giving all of these facts, they can be powerful facts. They can be dynamic facts. They can be wonderful facts. But if it just seems like they're coming from you, then your credibility better be so great that you are an expert on the subject. Rather, what you need to do is to cite the sources it comes from. I don't know how many times I've sat back, listened, and they've had all of this wonderful information, and this information that clearly they researched because nobody goes around knowing all of that stuff, and yet they don't tell me where they got it. Please tell me where you got it. Tell me with your mouth. Tell me where you got it. Give your verbal citations, especially in this speech, in all of the speeches, because you get counted off in all of the speeches if you don't give them, but definitely in this speech. So look for the credible sources. Now, so you've got your credibility, that's a tool. You got a whole realm of research out there. You've got a whole library of research out there on your computer available to you right now. Other good sources. Now, what's next? A third tool that you have is reasoning. Now, reasoning helps kind of put the facts together a little bit to help you make your argument. Like there's a thing called, well, one is just from the book, principle reasoning. What does that mean? That means that your argument is based on one guiding principle. And that one guiding principle is one that both sides must agree upon, or that both sides must stand by. For instance, back in the day, you've heard of women's suffrage. You may have heard of a lot of those heroes back in the day. And so, what was their basic argument? Their basic argument was on a principle. The principle is that the U.S. Constitution says that all United States citizens have the right to vote. That all United States citizens have the right to vote. It's right there with the Founding Fathers wrote it. It's right there in the Constitution, they argue. Therefore, by this reasoning, you go to the next step in that they are people. They are residents, not only residents, but they are members, or whatever we are, citizens. That's the word I'm looking for, citizens of the United States. So the argument goes that if we all agree to this principle that all citizens of the United States are able to vote and that women are citizens of the United States, ergo, it's a good word, ergo, women are able to vote. That was basically the message of that whole campaign, the message they had to figure out how to say again and again and again and again, reasoning based on one big principle. Second type is reason based on cause and effect, basically causal reasoning, saying that this will cause this to happen. Like, for instance, if the economy is not doing so well, if the economy is struggling, what they've done some in the past, once in a while in the past, is they have said, okay, they being the upper folks of the government, said, okay, then what we're going to do is while people are struggling in this hard economy, is we're going to find a way to get money to the people, to cut checks from the government to the people. And the idea is causal relationship. The people will spend them in the economy, which will give them some relief, some extra money to spend, but they will spend it in the economy, and therefore the economy will improve and the economy will grow. Causal effect. If you give them money to spend, it will help the economy in the end. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. I really don't know, but that's just an example. A third example is comparison. Comparison. It's like, okay, it's worked in one place and maybe it'll work in another place. Use this all the time. I'll say in the gun debate, in the gun control debate, what is one of the arguments of those who want to control guns? One of the arguments is, well, look at Australia. Back in, I don't know when, 60s or 70s, I don't have I know this, but have not studied the facts, so I would not do this say this in a real informative speech. You need to look this up. Don't take my word for it, but something like in the 60s and the 70s, they had all kinds, maybe even the 80s, they had all kinds of mass murders and mass shootings and mass all this stuff. And so what did they do? Well, they passed laws to limit access to guns. And what happened is that they say that in Australia that the mass shootings stopped, or pretty much stopped. They say, ergo, it's a good word to remember, ergo, since that worked in Australia, that will work in the United States in the same way. The other side has their arguments as well. Why it wouldn't work and everything, and that's fine. You have arguments on each side, but that is an example. That is an example of comparison. You compare two different things, comparative advantages of two different things. Sort of like if what are the advantages? Like if trying to think of one. There are all kinds of them. Well, you're trying to decide. You're a city and you're trying to decide where to put a park. Parks and Recreation, if any of y'all watched that, trying to decide where to put a park. And so what you do is you ask the people, and the people have different opinions about where to put a park. And some of them say, well, comparing this spot to other spots, this spot will get a whole lot more people and a whole lot more traffic and be useful to the people. And somebody else might say, yeah, but let's compare it to this spot over here, which will get almost as many people, but it's a lot less expensive than this over here. So that's arguing by comparison, another way to make your argument. Now, a fourth tool that you have is an appeal to emotion. This is important. Sometimes people say, I don't bring emotion into this. All I want to hear is the facts. Well, in my opinion, emotion is a part of what was built into us, and emotion is the part of our operating system is a part of who we are. Our emotions are a part of who we are. And I don't think that we can necessarily just dismiss our emotions or tell somebody else just to dismiss their emotions. So yes, there will be times in persuasive speeches where you're going to want to appeal to their emotions, where you want to tell an emotional story, whether it's your story or somebody else's story, to tell an emotional story, which is wonderful. Or yeah, I don't know. It better be a good poem, or to read some beautiful poetry, or to refer to a wonderful song, or whatever it is. But there will be times, and there are ways you need to practice this. Let's just say this: that when you're trying to appeal to emotions, it should sound different than when you are. I say than when you're quoting statistics, but sometimes the statistics are made to be emotional as well. But let's just say that if the statistics that you're using are supposed to be emotional, then you need to use your voice, to use your demeanor, to use your face to express that emotion. Whether it's a happy emotion or a proud emotion, yay, we had this much increase on whatever, or all of this is called, this statistics and this death and this whatever. You need you put a little of yourself into it. Use your emotions, because they're yours and they're real and they have effect. Now, what you don't want to do is abuse your emotions or abuse somebody else's emotions. One terrible example. There are no wonderful examples. It's a terrible example, but you've heard it before. So you're a grandparent. Your grandparents may have heard this before. You get a telephone call. It's a grandparent. My mother, who's a grandparent, has gotten these before. You get a telephone call and said, Nana, it's me, acting like it's a grandson. Say, I'm in trouble. Can you send me $2,000 or whatever it is? Oh, I'm in trouble. And they have all of the answers and can tell you how they got into the trouble and why they need the money and why they can't call somebody else. Trying to appeal to your emotions to rob you. That would be an unethical use of emotions. Now, other unethical uses of emotions are if you use the emotions to try to cover up, the facts that don't work your way. If you've done research and you've actually come to the conclusion that, well, this is not right, and this is a criminal defense. What used to be a criminal defense, part of what I did was criminal defense, and so that's what I did. Let's just say that it becomes unethical when you use the emotions to cover up the facts. Use your emotions to illuminate the facts, to broaden the facts, to make the facts hit home. But don't try to use your emotions to change the facts to fit what you want the facts to be. I guess that's enough on that. So let me turn my little piece of paper over here. How do you know if you've won? Trying to persuade a person, trying to persuade people. How do you know if you've won? Well, sometimes you know automatically whether you've won or not. One of your biggest persuasive speeches you will have is to get a job, It's what a job interview is. It is your opportunity, well, to get to know the person and to see if you click and to see if you would fit good with the company or whatever, but it is also your opportunity to basically sell who you are to the other person, to try to persuade the other person that you're the right person for the job. So, oftentimes, right away, within a week or two or whatever it is, whenever you hear back from the job, whether you persuaded the person or whether you didn't persuade the person. Sometimes you never know. Sometimes you kind of leave it out there and there is no arbitrator of what happens or what doesn't happen. Sometimes there is. But note this, you don't always have, you don't, winning, maybe that's the wrong way, persuading. I'll use the word persuading. Persuading doesn't always mean taking someone who is over here on the issue and bringing them over here on the issue to where you are, to where they believe everything you say. Now, maybe persuasion could be somebody who is over here on the issue, but when you speak to them and you give your facts, they say, I still think I'm right, but I'm over here on the issue now. Maybe that's some good persuading. Or maybe you've got all of these people in the middle of just a little bit, and where all of the people that are way over here aren't going to change their minds, but you have your speech and you got the people in the middle, you got the three Supreme Court justices that you've got to convince. And maybe you say, okay, well, of those three people in the middle, two of them have come my way. Maybe that's persuading. Sounds like persuading to me. Or maybe you've got the person you're way over here, you've got the person way over here, and you don't make any points with them, and they don't believe what you're saying, and they don't come over at all in their beliefs, but maybe for the first time, at least they're willing to listen. Maybe that's a part of persuading as well, to be willing to listen to one another. Cool. All right, now we are down to another question, and that is, how to structure this thing. How to structure your persuasive speech. So, a couple of options. One option is simply this. You can use the same outline on your persuasive speech that you used on your informative speech. That is fine. One way to, to think of what your main points are on that is what they call a problem and a solution. There's a problem out here, and I know the solution. The problem is that the economy is bad. The solution is, or a solution is, that we send money to a lot of people to spend it in the economy. So you have the problem and solution. So in that, you'd still have, in your first part, you'd still have all of your organization and introduction and attention getter and credibility statement and preview of points, transition, and all of that good stuff. In the second point, you tell us about the problem. And you'd use your reasoning, and you'd use your statistics, and you would use your research, and you would use all of that. So this is the problem. And then you might go and you might say, okay, this is how the other side wants to solve that problem, but it doesn't work. They want to do this, but it doesn't work. And you've only got 5 to 6 minutes. At least that's the way it usually is. You've only got 5 to 6 minutes. So you don't have a lot of time to do this, but you acknowledge it in a couple of words or phrases. You acknowledge the other side, a couple of words and phrases. Then you say, but now let me take you to what will really work. Let me take you to my conclusion, not to my conclusion. Let me take you to my solution. And then you give your solution. And then you have a transition to the conclusion, and poof. It's basically a two main point, a wonderful 2 main point speech. Another way to do it is sort of, as I said, comparative advantage. So you say, okay, if we say, here's the issue, you might raise the issue in your introduction statement, in your introduction. You say, okay, So here's one. My first point is that we could do this. We could do this. We could try this. We could make this happen. We could do it that way. In fact, a lot of these folks over here or over here want to do it that way. We could do it that way. But let me compare what happens when I turn it over and do it this way. Let me compare how it looks if we build the park over here instead of over here. Acknowledging the good points or whatever they say about the park over here, but saying, okay, let's compare, do it with the park over here. So that's another way. An example again is mediation. Now, there's different types of mediation, but when you're doing mediation, when you're about to go to court, they say, okay, before you go to court, you've got to mediate. You know, one of the things that the mediator will do, the mediator will go to your side and say, okay, I want you to do some figuring for me. How much is it going to cost you to try this case? That is to try this case in front of a jury. How much is it going to cost your client to finish this case to the very end, including appeals? And then you start, if it's a big case, you start doing it and you say, well, we got another month and a half of preparation. Is going to take this much time. It's going to be about if it's a month trial, I'm throwing it, I've never done more than a week trial, but anyway, okay, let's do it for a week trial. Okay, so we're going to try it it'll take a trial week or two. So okay, we'll go back and say, okay, how much do you charge per hour of trial? And how many hours will you be in trial? And how many hours that week of the trial week will you be, out of there thinking about the case or preparing the case? Then, okay, add all of that together. Now, this is a big case and the other side is going to appeal. Start adding up how many hours it's going to take you to prepare the appellate brief and how many it's going to take you if it gets argued to go argue that appellate brief, and add all of that up. And suddenly what they're saying to your client is, look, you're about to have to pay another $70,000, another $120,000, another whatever, $100,000. You're going to have to pay that anyway. Why don't you make this guy over here an offer of, say, $75,000. And then he'll have his $75. You'll save $75 in attorney fees and court costs, and everybody will be happy. Comparative advantage is what they're talking about there. Comparative advantage. All right, the second way that you can do this speech, and I don't have the piece of paper with me that I'm going to hand to you or that you already have, is Monroe's motivated sequence. So I'm going to look it up in the book. Monroe's motivated sequence is, you can follow basically your same outline. First of all, as I'm continuing to talk, let me look this up. First of all, there's an A, and that is the attention getter. You're going to want to get their attention and bring their attention to the topic, and you're going to want to do that very quickly. This is on page 306 to 310 of this version of this wonderful textbook. So you're going to want to do the attention getter. And when you're doing it here in class, you're going to have, after the attention getter, you're going to have all of those things that you have in the introduction. You're going to still have to do credibility. You're still going to have to do, here they are. Page 308 is where all these steps are. You're still going to have to do credibility. You're still going to have to do preview of points. You're still going to have to do transit. You're still going to have to do all of that. But you have a detention getter. Then the next step is the need. You got to show that there is a need, whatever that need may be. Demonstrate that there's a need. Then you've got to say, okay, how do you satisfy that need? Let me tell you how to satisfy that need. I'll give you an example in just a few minutes, how to satisfy that need. And then what do you have? Then you have visualization. You say, okay, think with me. You've got this need. And if you follow what I say to satisfy that need, imagine how the world would be. Imagine how your life would be. Imagine how things would be better. And then you go to the last step. So basically, you could do this in the same outline. The attention is in the first part. You do the rest of the first part. The need is one main point. The satisfaction is one main point. The visualization is one main point. And then the last step is the action step. I want you to therefore do something. I want you to do something. I want you to go buy my product. I want you to go vote my way. I want you to go recycle the goods. I want you to do all of this. This is Monroe's motivated sequence. And you know where you find Monroe's motivated sequence all the time? TV commercials. You think about that. Just about all TV commercials are some version of this one that I'll show you. Okay, so it's a hot summer day, and all of the guys and all of the girls and all of the folks are out there and they're playing volleyball. And they're hitting the ball and hitting the ball and hitting the ball, and they're sweating and they're attractive people. And okay, so you're into that and you say, there, you've got my attention. And then they go to the knee. The next scene, 5, 7 seconds later, they say, man, it's hot out here. Aren't you thirsty? Yes, I'm thirsty too. So there's the attention getter, and then there's the need. Then the satisfaction step. The voice comes up. Drink my soft drink. Drink my Coca-Cola. Drink my Pepsi. Drink my Mountain Dew. Drink my sports drink. Because it has what it takes to satisfy you. It has what it takes to refresh you. All of that good stuff. So that's the satisfaction stage. And then the visualization stage. So, okay, you've drunk their Coca-Cola. What's the next scene? Well, the next scene is they're still out there. Then they're still at the beach, but it's in the evening and everything is cool and everything is good. And they've got a little fire and they're laughing and they're telling jokes. And it's just wonderful. And then you get to the last step. You get to the action step, and the action step says, go buy my Coca-Cola, go buy my sports drink, go do it, and you too will live this wonderful life. Oh, Monroe's motivated sequence. You can certainly use that if you would like to. So that kind of comes to the end of this. 41 minutes, 39 seconds, 40 seconds, 41 seconds, 41. That was pretty cool. So what I have for you to do the rest of the time is, one is I'm going to, as I'm saying this to the class that I'm saying it to right now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to send you a link, unless I figure out a way to put a link on the assignment, or 2 links on the assignment. I'll try to put the 2 links on the assignment here with this video. But if not, I'll need to send you 2 links, at least 2 links. One link will be a link to toward Monroe's motivated sequence, to a commercial based on Monroe's motivated sequence. And then I'll send you a second link to a persuasive speech that might not be perfect. It might not be perfect, but hopefully it'll be a pretty good one, and hopefully it will help guide you along the way. Anyway, continue to work hard, do your research, get ready to go. This is going to be fun. Get ready for that persuasive speech, and blessings on you. If you have questions, reach out. Probably will. Reach out. Thanks so much. See y'all soon.